Howdy again, everybody. This is Doc with ThoroFan. Happy New Year, happy 2024, happy birthday to all of those thoroughbreds out there who officially turn 1 year older as of January 1st this year. And of course, for racing, it's probably a good thing as we want to put 2023 as much behind us as possible. But something did occur right around the end of 2023 that I think we at ThoroFan here wanted to kind of explore a little bit further and explain some of the process for certain things. And that was a race that happened at Aqueduct on December 16th. It was the Great White Way, a race as part of the New York Stallion Series division. And it had quite an interesting event happen right around the quarter pole. So let's go ahead first and take a look at that race, and then we'll discuss it when we get back.
Liberty Central Fractious now moves. And they're off, and it was a very slow start for BD Saints as the early trailer. Liberty Central, also broken a tangle, is the early trailer. Complexion changes here as heavyweight champs right out to the front. Heavyweight champs in Solos Fury. They're going to be a clear 1-2 out in the center of the racetrack. Following them, the Big Torpedo is right there tracking in third. The rail is open here for Antonio Venice, who's now secured fourth. Towards the outside there comes Brick Ambush, who's going to be in the fifth spot. Palace Boss is out wide, is in sixth. Then at the rail, that's King Freud. Further back in the field is Solo Empire. As we go towards the tail end, BD Saints is shoved along. Profitability is right there. Also, Liberty Central trying to make up some ground as they work into that far turn. 22.49 for that opening quarter mile. They're chasing on the front end. Heavyweight champs. Solos Fury is right there. Antonio Venice is in gear. Also rallying on. Brick Ambush has got a run, is now running after them 3 wide. Also making a rally. Here comes Solo Imparis, and Solo Imparis is in gear. There is the Big Torpedo in between horses. They are stacked up here as they reach the top of the stretch. Gets real tight there for the Big Torpedo. Had to check. Heavyweight champs is in front. Heavyweight champs has got the lead. Brick Ambush is right up alongside. It's heavyweight champs who's boxing onto the inside. Brick Ambush trying to catch them both. Antonio Venice is in the clear, and Antonio Venice is now launching here late in the blue blinkers. Antonio Venice 3 wide. Antonio Venice takes the lead. Brick Ambush is back to second. Heavyweight champs is in third. Antonio Venice is your winner. Antonio Venice gets the victory over Brick Ambush. That gave heavyweight champs the Big Torpedo, Liberty Central, in another photo in 1 minute 24.40 in today's ninth.
All right, so watching that, anybody who watched it really felt that at least there was going to be a Stewards Inquiry based on the actions of the number 1, who was the winner, Antonio Venice, coming out like he did and affecting kind of all the other horses, creating a chain reaction, so to speak, with some of the other horses, and potentially an objection by one of the jockeys of those other horses that was affected. And there was an inquiry certainly lodged by the stewards. There was talk that Javier Castellano did also lodge an objection, but somehow that never got up to the stewards, so they at least looked at it from an inquiry standpoint, and it was quite a lengthy inquiry, as inquiries go. So a lot of us figured there was probably going to be a disqualification, and it was likely going to be the number 1, Antonio Venice, the winner, for coming out and causing all the interference right at that point on the turn. I think a lot of us were shocked to find out after that long inquiry that they kept the number 1 up and disqualified the second place horse, Brick Ambush, for interference and placed him behind the other horses. And that left everybody in the racing community scratching their heads saying, what the heck? And how could you possibly come to that sort of decision? And it just led to a firestorm on social media and even regular media outlets that cover racing, to be honest. Nobody could understand this decision. Nobody could figure out how they came to that conclusion. And there really was a lot of outrage at this because, you know, there's always questionable stewards' decisions, and you know, there's been a lot of talk about the stewards, especially in New York this year, not really being consistent, not being good at what they're doing, and just making a lot of questionable calls. But this one seemed to take the cake at the end of 2023. And so there was immediately kind of a request for an appeal of that decision made by attorneys for the owners of Brick Ambush, the Reeves, who are you know, wonderful owners and very supportive of racing, and especially New York racing. And so their attorney lodged an appeal with the New York State Gaming Commission. And the Gaming Commission came back and said, unfortunately, our hands are tied. We cannot look at an appeal of this decision, because basically it is a decision that was based on kind of what they call fact or based on the law of fact. It's written in a very legalese type of term. You can see it here. And basically what they're stating is that in their regulations, and you can see the regulation as it's written here, they determined that because it is basically a ruling of fact, they cannot look at appeals on rulings of fact. And so their hands were tied. There was no way they could look at the appeal, and the decisions of the stewards in these cases are final when it comes to, fouls and objections and disqualifications and placings of horses under this specific circumstance. So there was still a lot of real anger about this and trying to figure out how the stewards came to the decision they did. So, a lot of emails were sent to the New York State Gaming Commission asking for an explanation of this decision, and I did pull this off of the X account of Ray Pollock. So thank you for following up on this, Ray. And I'm going to read this just to make sure that I don't get any of this wrong in the response that was kind of given as to the decision that was made. So we're going to read this, and then we're going to break it down a little bit and kind of explain some of the things. Upon conclusion of the 9th race at Aqueduct on Saturday, December 16th, 2023, the stewards commenced an inquiry entirely of their own volition. The stewards officiating the race were Braulio Baeza Jr. for the New York State Gaming Commission, Juan Dominguez for the New York Racing Association Incorporated, and Samantha Randazzo for the Jockey Club. The three stewards' attention was focused on the field as it arrived near the quarter pole, where several horses converged and were in close contact. As evidence in the below attached screenshots, and there were some screenshots of this that were attached with this email response, horse Brick Ambush, number 12, ridden by Junior Alvarado, came up on three horses that were crowded together. Antonio Avenis, number 1, ridden by Manuel Franco, the Big Torpedo, number 7, ridden by Javier Castellano, and Solo's Fury, number 11, ridden by Jose Lescano, and made disruptive contact. The stewards were concerned that Castellano's contact with the other horses and their riders could have impacted the results of the race. During their 12-minute review, the stewards examined 6 separate camera angle views of the area of concern and conducted telephone interviews with Franco, Castellano, Lescano, and Alvarado. After review of the footage and interviews with the jockeys, the stewards unanimously concluded that Alvarado's movement of Brick Ambush to the inside at the quarter pole caused a chain reaction that impacted the race. Accordingly, the stewards disqualified Brick Ambush for interference. The following morning, all 4 jockeys were required to participate in a film review of the race and discuss the event with all 3 stewards. At the conclusion of the review, State Steward Baeza issued a 3-day careless riding suspension to Mr. Alvarado to be effective January 1st through January 5th, 2024. Mr. Alvarado accepted the penalty and declined to appeal. So that was kind of the unofficial official response put out by the New York State Gaming Commission as to exactly what the stewards looked at and what their reasoning was for this. And needless to say, reading this did not exactly appease anybody in the racing world as to an explanation or an acceptable explanation for the decision that was reached. So, it led to, again, really fierce criticism on social media and in regular racing media things, calling for stewards to be fired, calling for bosses of stewards to be fired, and all of this. So I figured, here at ThoroFan, we are about education first and foremost, and providing the best education for the fans and everybody else so that they can understand what's going on and then, hopefully work constructively to fix some of these problems. And in my personal opinion, and I think in a lot of fans' opinions, this is a problem. Anybody who looked at that race should know just by looking at it, even if you are the most novice race fan, even there for the first time, that the decision makes absolutely no sense based on what actually happened in the race. So let's back up just a little bit and kind of just go over quickly the stewards and their roles and how they are appointed to oversee races in New York State. So in New York State, if there is a race meeting that is going on that is properly sanctioned, there are 3 stewards that must be present at all times during the race meeting to oversee the racing that is going on. Now, each steward is appointed by a different entity. So you have first the New York State Gaming Commission, and they have appointed Braulio Baeza Jr. as their steward to oversee the races. You have the Jockey Club, and they have appointed the steward Samantha Randazzo to go ahead and be their steward that oversees races in New York. And then you have the New York Racing Association, who on this day, as it said, appointed Juan Dominguez, and I believe this is his picture based on the caption that I took this from when, you know, it was in a report that I garnered online. This is not Juan. I apologize, and somebody please tell me, and I will adjust things, of course, immediately and accordingly. But it is hard sometimes to find pictures of these people, and the stewards might say there's a good reason, as they don't really want their faces to be known when they are making these decisions and all of that. But those were the 3 stewards that were involved on that day. So basically, you know, for people saying, well, who oversees the stewards? Well, each organization kind of oversees their own steward under this hierarchical situation. There really is no high above governing body that oversees all of the stewards and their actions. And this has been one of the things that I think race fans, myself included, have been crying out for a number of years now, of getting some sort of more centralized steward agency that oversees all of the races going on a particular day, and they work from a central hub. So this would be kind of akin to what they call the Situation Room in Toronto for the NHL, where if there's a questionable call, it's, you know, while the referees that are on the ice or the linesmen, depending on what is being challenged, have a say and can provide information, it really is the folks that are in this situation room that are officials above them that are looking over the films as well and helping to come to a decision. And that's kind of, I think, what we really do need in racing. And there's been some question as to whether HISA can somehow work that into a regulation where there is a centralized steward agency and not, you know, individual appointed stewards at each racetrack. Now, the stewards will probably still have to be there for other actions, especially the safety steward part of it. That is a very big part of HISA and maintaining, you know, safety and other regulations and all of that. But we really would like to see some sort of setup like that in the future, and hopefully, you know, maybe asking HISA to look into this in 2024 is definitely a way to go. So that's the way the structure is. But there really is no, as I said, a higher level of that. People that hold those stewards accountable aside from the organizations themselves. So it would have to be a case of where if, let's say in the case of Samantha Randazzo, it would be the Jockey Club. They would be the ones that would kind of basically be overseeing her and deciding if they wanted to keep her on as a steward or not. For Naira, in this case, it would be Juan Dominguez in this case, or whatever other steward they have appointed for that day of racing. And in the case of the New York State Gaming Commission, it's Brian Lobeza Jr. You know, so it is a very disjointed kind of system that really has no central oversight, and that's obviously a big problem that we do need to see remedied. Now, the second part of that that I think angers a lot of people is the fact that the way the regulations are currently written in the state of New York, the New York State Gaming Commission cannot hear appeals of stewards' decisions of disqualifications based on rough riding, fouls, things of that nature. And that is not the case in every state. Some states do have that rule. I believe Kentucky has that rule, and that was a big issue in the maximum security disqualification fiasco that happened with the Derby a number of years ago, where the owners wanted to appeal that decision to the Racing Commission in Kentucky, and they couldn't because all stewards' decisions of that nature are deemed final and could not be appealable. So, however, in Pennsylvania, and I'm very familiar with the rules here, in Pennsylvania, it's different. Whereas you can see, you know, as we're putting up here, the regulation citation in Pennsylvania, the commission can hear appeals from that, as far as I'm understanding this. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer. If somebody interprets this differently and feels that there is no way, please, again, let me know. Send it in the comments, send me an email, whatever, and I will adjust things accordingly. But my understanding is that you can appeal these decisions to the State Racing Commission, and having been involved in going to almost every PA State Racing Commission meeting over the last several years, I can tell you it does come up from time to time, and there are rulings that are made on this. It's very, very rare that the commission will overturn the ruling of a steward, but I do believe it has happened once or twice based on the evidence that was presented and video replay, and then the opinion of the Racing Commission members at that point. So it really raises the question of, well, how do we get then from let's say with the regulation type in PA, how do we get that approved in New York? And so that is a fairly complicated and long process, as anything involving with state, local, federal government is, in getting the regulation changed. This cannot be a rule that is just kind of, you know, created by the 3 entities that oversee the stewards. There has to be a process for this. And that process goes through the regulation creation process in the New York State Gaming Commission. So very quickly, the New York State Gaming Commission is made up of 7 members. All 7 members are appointed by the governor, but one of those members has to be appointed based on the recommendation of the temporary president of the Senate, and one of those members has to be appointed based on the recommendation of the Speaker of the Assembly. So this gives at least the appearance of, everybody involved in the legislature and the governor's office, so the legislative and the executive branch both having a say in who's on the commission. And so if you wanted to look up, or we're putting up right now, a graphic just showing who the current members of the New York State New York State Gaming Commission, I should say, are. Now, as we showed you, one of the duties, I guess, assigned to the commission is to come up with and enforce rules and regulations for racing in New York State. And so they've done that. And you can look them up online. You can find the rules and regulations of racing anywhere. And we have cited a couple of those. Now, what happens if you want to get a new regulation on the books or a regulation changed? Well, that involves the whole process of what we call promulgation of regulations. And I know this sounds incredibly boring, and I apologize, but I do want people to really understand this process, where if a rule wants to be changed, a member of the commission has to first propose it at a meeting, that we create a new rule or amend a rule that is there. It then basically sort of has to be written up in proper legal language by the commission's legal counsel, and then it goes for approval at a couple of other state agencies to make sure it fits with the spirit of what the legislature wanted, in giving them the power to promulgate regulations. And then it also goes through a whole period of public comment, being published in what's called the New York State Register, the New York Register, so that everybody is aware that this regulation is being proposed. It then goes through another potential agency that oversees just rules and regulations and their promulgation to make sure that it's in, quote unquote, the best interest of the public. And then it can go through multiple revisions that then go back out for public comment, and until it finally becomes, a finalized regulation that the commission approves. This can be a very long process. I can tell you in PA the way it goes, and this is probably longer now because they've had such a backlog since the COVID pandemic, but if you were really lucky to get a regulation from start to finish that is not kind of what's considered an emergency temporary regulation, which is a little bit different, it can take up to 18 months. From start to finish. So that's a short time frame if you're lucky. And that's kind of the thing we're up against in New York if you want to get the regulation changed. We have to start the ball rolling now. So we have to be able to kind of create a concerted effort to contact the commission, go to meetings, make public comment, write letters in, find out who the members of the commission are and contact them, find out who the players are in the legislature who appointed some of these people and ask them to put pressure on them to potentially change this regulation. Contact the governor's office. I mean, obviously the governor does appoint a majority of the board, the commission, and ask her to go ahead and ask them to look into this issue and hopefully, start to make the change that we all want to see. And really what we're asking is that that regulation just be altered slightly to allow the commission to go ahead and hear these appeals and then make a decision. And, then if the aggrieved party wants to go ahead and appeal it higher up the court chain, when you get out of the regulatory realm and into just the state courts, they have the right to do that. The Reeves had the right to do that in this case, too. They chose not to, based on kind of some of the law that was already present, and they weren't sure they were probably going to get anywhere with it. So really, instead of trying to constantly challenge this thing legally in court right now, what we feel kind of probably is the best way to go about it is to work to get the regulation altered. And that's what we at ThoroFan are going to be working on in 2024 to start. We are going to be researching this, seeing what the best way to go about it is. But we urge all of you out there that really want to see more of this, consistency in stewards rulings and being able to appeal rulings and things like that right into the state commission you're at, especially to the New York State Gaming Commission. Ask them to look at this, ask them to change it, and also consider contacting HISA on this as well and seeing if they can work out a potential regulation that creates a national steward overship body. I honestly, I don't know if it's possible based on the way the current HISA law was written, but I think it potentially could be worked in there. But that's for, lawyers to figure out and things like that. So that's kind of where we stand with the whole fiasco with the Great White Way and, the outrage that it's caused. And of course, everybody being upset with the stewards' decisions. And we want to try to get a little bit more central oversight and at least some sort of oversight to hold more stewards accountable. And the way to do that, change the regulations, really get the ball process on changing get the ball rolling, I should say, on changing the rules. So I hope that kind of explains things a little bit. Again, I apologize. I know this is kind of boring legal stuff. Hopefully we won't have too much more boring legal stuff for the rest of the year with ThoroFan, but there were a lot of questions and a lot of complaints about this, and I wanted to try to explain things in a hopefully a fairly simplistic manner as to what needs to be done. And so everybody out there, get involved. You know, make 2024 the year where you as the fan, the handicapper, everybody really gets involved in the commission meetings, because I can tell you from being there, that is where a lot of the change happens, folks. It's not in the courts. You know, the courts may drag things out, the courts may listen to appeals and may make slight rulings here and there, but it's at the commission level. It's at the level where the rules are made that we have to really work to make an impact. And be it in regulations, be it in breakage, be it in changing takeout levels, all of that stuff happens at the commission or state legislature level. And that's why you really need to get involved. So, you know, if you have any questions about that, how to contact your legislators, legislators, you know, assemblymen, senators, representatives, governors, anything, drop us a line here at ThoroFan. We will try to do the best we can in getting you connected with the right people. And as I said, ThoroFan is going to start looking into this, and we'll give you updates throughout the year. So I hope that helped kind of clear things up a little bit. Like I said, I know we really want to leave a lot of what happened in 2023 in the rearview mirror for the good of everybody, but I did want to kind of explain a little bit about this and how we can hopefully bring about some positive change moving forward. So I am Doc for ThoroFan, and as always, if you, the racing fan, are looking for the most up-to-date and accurate information about this great sport of thoroughbred racing made solely by us, the racing fans, there's only one place you need to turn, and that is right here at ThoroFan.